I'm Vicki Wolson. This is Victor Schmidt.
How are you?
Director here of the Tolstoy Foundation, and this may be a, I don't know, once in a lifetime experience, but this is really kind of a blast from the past over here. We have a elderly community living independently with a little bit of Russia, settled in here from about 1939. So this is our 70th anniversary. The foundation started as a refugee center. As many of you know, maybe many people, I'm first generation born in the United States. Families came over from Europe and all over the world up through 1924 through Ellis Island. And then after that, America opened its gates to lots of people from lots of different countries through different immigration centers around the country. Beginning in the late 30s and early 40s, Alexandra Tolstoy, who was the youngest daughter of Leo Tolstoy, the famous writer, humanitarian, social mover and shaker, basically founded the foundation in 1939 as a refuge for war-torn emigres from around the world. At the time that it was built, the majority of people living here at the time and who we were bringing in as refugees were of Orthodox extraction. However, as an organization, we are non-denominational. We have several Buddhist refugees living here right now, Tibetans who have political asylum because of the problems in China. We have many other groups living here on our campus.
Before we go in, I just want you to pay some attention to the general structure of the church. All right. Typically, the Russian Orthodox Church, which is a very old type of traditional Christian church, and as most early Christian churches, built their churches just architecturally from the traditions of the Old Testament temple. What they did was that the theology behind it was, well, if Christ was on the cross, he sort of opened up heaven to everyone. So they took the basic structure, and what used to be the court, the first part, became the narthex of the church. So in most Orthodox churches, you'll see when you first walk in, there's a little section. As you could see here, even from the outside, there's a little entryway. Then you have the main body of the church, which now has become where most of the parishioners stand, where before only priests used to stand. And then at the very end, you'll have the altar, which is now where the priests stand to consecrate the gifts and have the service. And you'll find that a lot of churches in Russia, as well as up in Norway and in other Scandinavian countries, will have a dome on top, just as a practical issue. But as a theological issue, it's meant to symbolize that heaven stands above, and the church sort of supports heaven.
This is called the Novgorod-Pskov style, two northern cities in Russia. So if you take a look at churches in Russia, you'll see some really reflect more about from what towns and what type of architecture, but they all follow these theological lines.
And then this set was given to us not too long ago, and this was forged in Russia specifically for us. And they're beautifully sounding bells, and they're here temporarily until we put them up into a proper bell tower. This is a church named after Saint Sergius of Radonezh, which you'll hear about in a few minutes. Typically, in the narthex of the church, you'll have a candle stand or an area where people can purchase candles. In this case, you'll also see that there is a staircase going upstairs, because the choir loft typically is upstairs, in at least most Russian Orthodox churches here in the United States.
Orthodox churches do not have any musical instruments. It is entirely a choral service.
Once you pass this narthex, you're now here in the main body of the church. If you take a look up, typically you have a very tall area, again, with the concept of the fact that you look up toward the heavens. Typically you will find frescoes and icons directly painted onto the walls of most churches and the ceilings. We have very good examples of a variety of icons here. Many of them have covers. front of you, you see a partition here, a raising of the floor, a partition which is called an iconostat, and behind that the altar. Typically you have, again, the royal gates in the middle, the royal gates which symbolize the gates of heaven. You will have a door to the left and to the right. This is a more practical issue, so people who serve in the service can come in and out without going through the royal gates. And on top, typically the first row are the 12 major feasts in the Christian church, and on top of that are various prophets, Old Testament, or saints, and anyone else at the church parish.
We have a lot of documents, even from early immigration papers, from people who came into the United States. A lot of very interesting files, letters from Russia between Alexandra Tolstoy, the years she taught in Japan in the 20s, out of prison. The library. This used to be the old cow barn. We are now standing in what was the hayloft. There is another floor above us where literally the hay was stored, and this used to be a big working area. Alexandra Tolstoy, who, as I mentioned to you, was the youngest daughter of Leo, really inherited his whole humanitarian drive and became his confidant, secretary. He died in 1910. She died in 79. She said, I'm going to carry on my dad's traditions and try to help people in need. She opened up a lot of cultural avenues, again, as I mentioned, to anybody who came and lived here or actually flowed through here and tried to settle out into the communities all across the United States. Lots of emigres donated books. We have 57,000 volumes in here. There are no original Tolstoy manuscripts here, but we do have a lot of first editions of books that were printed in Japanese, in French, in many, many languages of some of Tolstoy's works.